It's a pleasure having you
Thank
here.
you.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what you do?
Well, my background is kind of all over the place. I've been in the tech industry for a really long time. I like to joke that I'm an internet old because I've been around for a while. I started out as a front end developer in the kind of the early days of the web. Like I don't want to be too dramatic about it, but it was yeah, it was quick back in the early days, front end development and design, and I ran my own dev shop for a bunch of years, and built all kinds of different projects and that kind of stuff. But I got involved with Code4rena. I mean, yeah, and so I've worked kind of in different roles in the tech industry over the years. But I joined Code4rena in May 2021, so pretty early on. It was like I think the I think like I was just looking at the Discord logs. I think they started it up in February of 2021, and I had worked with Sock on some other projects, and so he asked if I'd come and join the crew and help to run some of those early audits. And I was like, I don't know anything about I don't know anything about Web3 and I don't know anything about security. And he's like, that's okay. You know how to run events and you know how to manage a community and you know how to organize a business and like all and you work with devs and all of that kind of stuff. So I was like, all right, like I'm game. I'm game to jump in and see what happens. And so those early days were pretty wild in kind of a typical startup way of like the learning curve was steep. I may have somewhat exaggerated. It's not like I knew zero about security, but it was definitely never like I didn't come in as a security specialist. Let's say that I am not a warden. I am never going to be a judge. Those kinds of things are definitely outside my wheelhouse. But what I got really excited about really quickly is that I was I've always found so I've worked in and around open source communities for a lot of my career. And one of the things that I'm always very interested in is um, how those kinds of projects can align a lot of different kinds of incentives and like work to satisfy a lot of different people's and organizations' needs. And when I figured out what Code4rena was about, that was the thing that really hooked me because I was like, okay, this is very, very exciting because we've got projects that need better security. Not every project has that skill set in house. And even if they do, I think we've all I think every coder has had the experience. Probably every entrepreneur has also had this experience, but it's like there's something so special about the experience of bringing a new one of our developers was just saying this yesterday. He's they said I never learned so much about my projects as when I onboard a new developer into them. Right? Like there's something so magical about fresh eyes, right? And so I think even the big even the chain links, right? Like they come in and they've got incredible people on the project. It's not like they don't have the skills in house but it's like it's the fresh eyes and the number of eyes is so valuable, and the diversity of viewpoints and all of that kind of stuff, right? So I got really excited about that aspect and how it really helps organizations. It provides opportunities to freelance security researchers who, and most of whom, and I empathize with this, do not really want to run their own business. Like they don't want to be like doing sales and marketing and onboarding and like invoicing and legal, like can I just do the work and then and then get paid and not have to do all the rest? And meanwhile, because so much of what we do is out in the open, I also got really excited about that aspect of it because it felt like it was leveling up the whole ecosystem and and really providing not that we're like educational at our core, but that there's an educational component to what we're doing. So that's that's what got me hooked, and that's what kept me around. And so now my role, which I didn't really describe, my role started out as like an everything person, and now I'm the head of the product ops team, which means that I try to support and guide the developers who are building our product, the contest admins who are running the competitions and supporting our sponsors, and all of our customer success people. So basically all of the kind of like delivery aspects of what we do.
So from the time you started, you said it was a bit crazy. What do you think has changed since the 2.5 years, more or less, that you've been involved in there?
Well, a lot of things. The number of audits that we're running. I mean, it was funny. Jay, who also came on at the same time as me. Jay and I were reminiscing the other day, and we sort of had this moment going, "Do you remember when there used to be one day a week when we would launch audits? Like it used to be that we only would launch them on Wednesdays, and they always ran for a full week. It was just like there were just so many of the steps were manual that it was very it required a lot of effort to launch an audit. So we were like, oh yeah, back anyway. So the quantity for sure has increased a lot. The variety of different offerings that we have. I mean, our community has grown exponentially. If you look at those early reports, you'll see 12 or 15 wardens listed on the reports as having contributed. And you'll see, like, if you look through the user profiles, the Code4rena profiles on our website, you'll see the OG tag on a few wardens' names, and that's what it refers to, right? It's like the OG team of wardens who were like building C4 with us, right? And just contributed so massively to helping us build a reputation, and hopefully we hope that they feel the same, like that we helped them build their reputation. That was definitely the goal. But yeah, so the number of wardens competing increased massively. I think we have, the last time I checked, which was a while ago, we had over 5,000 registered wardens in Code4rena. Now, have they all actually competed? I don't know. Like I don't have those stats at hand, but we have a lot of registered wardens, and definitely a lot of people submitting to every audit, and that's changed a lot. But I mean, the biggest thing is really that it may be sort of invisible to a lot of the community members, especially the newer community members, but we've worked very, very hard at building repeatable processes that are fair and that prioritize the security of projects while also providing opportunities for the wardens. And that is a really delicate balance. Like that, it's something we take very, very seriously. And I think that for the wardens, it may sometimes feel like, I don't know if it feels like this. I sometimes imagine that it feels like we're moving slowly at making changes. And the reason for that is that we, the team that works at C4, we're all pretty seasoned, like we've run businesses in the past, we've built a lot of projects, and we know that there's a lot of that every platform out there has unintended consequences on display, right? Like where they shipped a feature thinking it was going to do X, and then it actually did Y, Z, and ABC, right? And then they suddenly had 7 problems they had to clean up, or do you know what I mean? And so we're always thinking, we do deliberate quite carefully over things, and we want to get the processes really right so that so that the project security is always front and center, and that we are doing things very deliberately in ways that really reflect our core philosophy, and so I feel really proud of that. I think, it's not like we've never had to roll anything back, but I think by and large we've built and honed processes that are I think are quite effective at balancing everybody's needs. So I think that's the biggest one. It's just and that's kind of one of those things where you probably don't, if we're doing it well, you actually, most people probably aren't aware of it. It's kind of like going to a really good restaurant. Like you're not, you don't, you're not aware of how hard the kitchen is working or how many days of effort it took them to, you know, prepare every ingredient on your plate.
So, what are the kind of things that need to happen behind the scenes for a successful audit to happen? What are the things that wardens or projects don't really see that's happening and making the gears turn?
Well, so first and foremost, our booking team works really hard to make sure that the audits are scoped really correctly and thoroughly, and that by the time they are announced, that the prize pools and the duration and all of that is like bang on. We also have a handful of wardens in the community that we call scouts who help us to really dig into the details and prepare the repos for the effort for every audit and make sure that they are like tight and solid, and that all of the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. So that's, I think, hard to see. There's just always a lot of back and forth. There's like, I got the kind of underlying thing there is, I think if you've ever worked on a software project, you know that like it's always a scramble. There's always like a lot of people, pushing PRs and, da 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 da, and like, and to try to get like, just that dance alone, right, on the sponsor side, to get the code to a place where they're like, okay, yes, this is the code, this is the commit, like we're ready to be audited, right? Like that, it's kind of like getting your taxes together, right? Like it's a lot, it's a lot. So they're doing all of this work, and then they're kind of like finally they're like getting the commit, and then they're also committing, no pun intended, to a code freeze for the duration of the audit, right? Which is also a big deal, right? To ask a project to do that. So that's all kind of happening behind the scenes before the audit even goes live. And then, so that's one kind of parcel of work that gets done. During the audit, I think one of the things that the auditors may not be aware of is the number of DMs that the sponsor team is fielding during an audit is incredible, right? So they're dealing with DMs from every type of warden, and they have to, and they're trying to filter, like they've got, and yeah, and so they're trying to filter. They've got people coming in going, how do these contests work anyway? You know what I mean? Like there's like every kind of question, from like the I'm brand new and I have no idea what I'm doing to like I am super elite and I have very complex technical questions and everything in between. So that's also, I think, a very invisible kind of work that's happening. And then after the audit, I think seasoned wardens understand this well, especially anybody who has backstage access. But for those who don't know and who aren't backstage, after the audits close, typically there are hundreds, if not thousands, of submissions that need to be reviewed. It is a lot, right? It is a lot. There are a lot of issues in that repo, and somebody has to go through them and dedupe them all and sift out anything that looks sort of spammy or low quality or invalid. And that work is a grind. It's like I feel like the people who do that work, those are the lookouts and the judges, and they're such heroes in C4 because they are, they're just sifting. They're sifting, triaging, surfacing anything that looks really high risk to the sponsor as early as possible, etc. So that's all. I think the backstage wardens do see that work happening, and and usually you'll see, like, if you're in the backstage channel, one of my favorite things to see is like the newly backstage people, the people who just got backstage access, will come in and they're like, I'm so excited to be here, I can't wait to escalate all of my issues. And then and then like the first time they see the effort involved, they're like, whoa, respect to the to the judges and respect to the lookouts, because all they've ever seen, all that's been visible to them up to that point is the the award announcements, right? It's like they see nothing, and then they see the award announcements, so then they have questions. Totally understandable. But when you have backstage access, you could see like the labor that goes into reviewing every single issue and trying to determine, where it sits in the quality and validity spectrum. Then it's sort of like, oh, maybe my maybe my submission, isn't as special as I thought, or maybe or maybe I can understand how sometimes something gets overlooked, or that kind of thing. So, or how there's complexity, because
Yeah, that's
sorry,
a
I'll just to go off on one tangent. Like one tricky thing that we're trying to figure out is like, what do we do about people using GPT and other like language, machine learning and AI stuff, and the challenge with that is it can be very, very difficult for a judge or a lookout to determine the difference between, oh, this person used GPT to clean up their grammar or to try to make it more legible, right? Versus this person just fed this repo into GPT and tried to get it to like spam this submission form, and that's like really human effort right now. There's like not we don't have the tools yet. The tools are very flawed, and we tried early on, right after ChatGPT came out, and we were seeing an uptick in use of it. We tried to. That was one thing we had to walk back. Actually, we were like, we initially were like, we have to draw a line, and we have to say this is not acceptable. And so then we started issuing warnings to wardens saying, hey, the judge flagged this as GPT. They've invalidated your findings. And then we got a lot of feedback from the community saying, hey man, like English is not my first language. This is like, I feel discriminated against. This is not okay. Like I'm really trying to make my work more legible. I'm like doing this in good faith. And we had to admit we'd made the wrong call there. So so we walked that back and we changed the policy.
that brings me to another interesting side of Code4rena nowadays, which are the
Yeah,
boat races, which are super interesting, I think. There's very good things about it and not so great things
sure.
about it. I think probably one of the main criticisms is that it, it's a bit of a wealth redistribution in some cases where
Yeah,
the beginners don't really have that much chance to catch the easier
yeah,
bugs, and that kind of is a bit of a paradox because those beginners are the ones that are gonna rise up and keep the protocol secure in the future,
yeah,
but then they don't have that early confidence boost. But at the same time, it drives the cost of bugs and the both for C4 to try and um, judge those, and also for the projects as well.
yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on
So
both
for I
of
mean
those
for
ends?
the so there were multiple motivators for us. I mean, one of the things is like, if Kevin Kelly, the uh, Wired magazine editor, wrote this book called Inevitable. I think I'm getting that right. I'll probably get it wrong. But it's all about like the technologies that are emergent, but that are inevitable, and that we can. His perspective is you can either try to resist the inevitable changes that are coming, or you can decide you want to work with them and adapt to them. And one of the ones that stressed me was like surveillance. He's like, surveillance is already everywhere. It's going to be even more ubiquitous. Like, we just all need to accept and adapt. And I was like, oh, I don't really love that. But it was very thought provoking, and it really stayed with me, because I was like, I think he's right. Like, I think he's right. We're all carrying around GPS in our pockets. There's just no doubt that we are, opening ourselves as a society on the whole, anyway, to like, greater levels of surveillance. Similarly, AI AI is just a fact, right? And so I think we need to adapt to it. So that was one of the principles that led us to bot races was just like, look, we know, I mean, let's like shout out a warden with an unpronounceable name. Everybody has a different way of pronouncing. Um, you know, uh, Bar L, Bar L, Bar L, Bar L. I refer to them as ill.
The
Yeah, other
defense.
people call them the fence. But we've known for a really long time that I like to call them ill. I don't know why. That's just like what I always called them. I could just kind of like it because it reminds me of old school hip hop. Anyway, I have no idea if the fence likes old school hip hop, but we uh, suspected for a long time that ill was like had a killer scripting suite because ill was always getting the top QA and gas report, and their findings were so thorough and so perfectly formatted and so like consistent, and it's like it just had like many of the hallmarks of like using bots well, right? Using scripting well. And um and we were like, well, we want to create opportunities for people like that. Like we know that that's a specialty that some wardens have. Some wardens are amazing at doing that. Also, so there's one, that's piece one. Piece no, sorry. Piece one is like AI is ubiquitous. Piece two is we know we have wardens in the community who are amazing at this, right? And we want to give them opportunities. Piece three is the lookout and judging stuff I was just talking about, like the amount of effort that goes into, and with full appreciation for wanting to give opportunities to like to newer wardens, to newer researchers. Um, as Code4rena scales, if you've got 400 people participating in a competition and 200 of those people are submitting the same QA bugs, it is too much work. Like, it's too much work for everybody. It's like repeating effort for all of those wardens, right? They're putting in work that is not going to get properly rewarded. The judges and lookouts are having to comb through all of those reports and like, validate and, assess them all for quality. It's exhausting. And also the sponsors, the value to the sponsors is so minimal, right? It's like they're not, that's not the stuff they care the most about. They like, so maybe gas ops, it depends on it depends on the protocol, but it's a slightly different piece. But the QA stuff in particular was getting really, really tough to kind of justify how much human effort was going into sifting and evaluating those. So that's a big part of it, and I do sympathize with the desire to have more opportunities for junior wardens. And we've talked a lot. I mean, I think that's like the one problem that remains to be solved. You know what I mean? Is like, okay, well, what do we do for those people? But the bot races address all of the other problems. So it's like, well, if you're going to solve problems, like if you're going to have to make trade-offs for us, I always want to make the trade-off that prioritizes the value to the sponsor, and also like future proofing our processes, right? So making it so that we are getting the highest value information to the sponsor with the most efficiency, and then rewarding the wardens who are able to provide that. So it's not an easy trade-off, because I have, I was like one of the, in my early days at C4, like a big part of my role was kind of community management, and I was hustling to go find wardens. Like that was, like I was like, what discords can I join to try to like, make people aware that this exists, and like try to like get this on people's radar, right? And so shifting from that mindset to like, not, we never ever want to be like gatekeeping, right? We always want to be an open door. And at the same time, there's just a like, how do we make this work so that it's not like, so that we're getting the right things in front of the right people with an appropriate level of effort.
Yeah, I think it all makes sense, and there's pros and cons to everything. And along with the different kinds of contests that appeared throughout the evolution of the industry recently, there's also other contest
Yeah,
platforms like Sherlock and more recently Code
yeah,
Hawk. And what do you think that makes the Code4rena community different from the other type of
yeah.
contest platforms? What do you think it differentiates?
Well, I mean, I can't speak deeply to them because I haven't, I don't, I haven't, I'm not a warden, so I haven't competed in them. So that's, I think I can say what I like from everything I'm going to say is going to be based on like what I'm hearing from wardens, basically. I think that just to jump back to what I said earlier about us taking a very deliberate approach to process changes, I think one of the places that I feel really good and confident about Code4rena, and I think I want to say it like I don't really try to compare the platforms too much because I think like I have huge respect for anybody who's trying to level up the ecosystem, honestly, and I think there's room for everybody. So it's not, I think, and I want wardens to have all the opportunities that they want and all of that stuff. So, and I think competition is good. Like I wouldn't be at Code4rena if I didn't think competition was good, you know? So with that all being said, I feel like our I feel really good about our judging processes. I think that's one thing where I think we've distinguished ourselves, and that has everything to do with the people who are judging the audits. I will take some credit and pride in having helped to develop many of the judging processes, and I feel really proud of what our team has built there. I think we have there's a lot of different ways you can approach judging, and we have consistently tried to prioritize impartiality, um, and uh, and care, and thoroughness. And I think I hear that reflected back, which is really nice to hear. Like I hear wardens talking about that on Twitter, and saying that they really value that about Code4rena, so that makes me feel really good. I think one of our special sauces is just like Sock Money. Sock he's an incredible leader, but really importantly, I think in addition to being, uh, he's such a star because in addition to being a technical person, um, and somebody who's actually worked on security projects before, and who's built a number of other projects before, and he's got an amazing head for business. But the thing that I think everybody knows this about Sock is like he's just an incredible community builder, and he really believes in people, and you can't really replicate that, and you can't really compete with that. Like he loves the community, and he believes in what everybody's doing, and he values everybody, and I think everybody feels that. Like everybody feels like, oh, like when I come into Code4rena, like I'm respected and I'm valued, and whatever level I'm competing at or whatever my area of specialty is, if my big specialty is like I create memes for the Awesome Nonsense channel, like I'm like that's valued, and like, or if I'm like, whatever your thing is, right? Like I think we really appreciate that, and he's that way with the staff, but he's that way with everybody because that's just who he is. And if you've ever met him in real life at a conference or anything, you just know that he just is that, and he really genuinely loves the community. And because he's like that, he also hires people who are like that. And so then we have a team of people who are in the Discord all the time who are just like, trying to make people feel like we're like you really are part of everything, because that's how we want you to feel. So I think I think that's pretty magical. And I know that's like very like, I don't know, may come off as like a soft thing, but it's really tangible, because what it means is like when we have needed to solve problems, we turn to the community and we ask the community and we're like, hey, like help us solve these tricky problems. And we bring people in. And that's how you make people feel important, is you make them actually important, right? like we, it's like we want you all to help us solve these problems. And so, when like scouting was a thing that emerged out of asking the community to help, we were like, we need to get some wardens in here getting these repos set up, because staff, we're not hired because we're like so good at setting up audit repos, right? Like we can have a checklist to make it like, but we're not wardens. So like let's get some wardens who can do this really well and who know what the wardens need, and get them doing a technical review of the repo, right? Let's get the judges to help us like craft the rules, right? Let's get, so that all, I think that all makes a huge difference. And we, um, yeah, and I really appreciate that about Sock, because even though I have a history in open source communities, he's always reminding me, like, hey, well, you've got a hard problem, like, who in the community can help, right? Like, who can we bring in? And I think that, so I think that's, anyway, so that's like maybe not like the most tangible answer, but those are the, I think judging is one. I think the community is magic. And I think because we turn to the community consistently, we I think our processes are just like really, really solid, and I feel really good about them. We also like this, I don't think is necessarily totally visible yet, but like we have a killer dev team now, and I think you're going to see some pretty cool stuff on the product side in the next few months. So I'm excited about that too.
Any teasers that
Oh,
you can
always,
share with
always the
us?
hardest question, because I never really know like what's okay to share. What can I say? Well, I mean, one thing I'm gonna be posting later today that I'm excited about. I keep talking about the judges today for some reason, but anyway, it's on my mind because I'm working on it actively. We are about to post a request for comment, so it's not necessarily a solid plan yet, but I'm hoping it will be a plan to have our first ever Code4rena Supreme Court session this fall, which will involve having three of our most senior judges come in and review all the open Org repo issues and like figure out how to resolve them and sort of rewrite the rules. And we're hoping that that's going to be a regular thing, so that either two to four times a year we would have a Supreme Court session to review and resolve rule-based concerns. And I know that's like I don't know, maybe I don't know if wardens like get excited about that. I'm very excited about it because I do think that's one of the things that wardens, I mean, it's one of the things I hear wardens talking about is like, hey, like we want bot races to be judged more consistently, or we want this, and those are things where I hope it's okay to get a little bit in the weeds here, but it's as a staff person, I don't want to make all of the rules for our contests because I'm not the best equipped. Like I'm not technical enough. I don't have the subject matter expertise, right? So I can certainly advise on like where I want the rules to be, like whose needs I want to consider and things like that. But I can't, like if the wardens come in and they're like, oh, we want like harsher penalties for invalids in bot reports. I'm like, I don't know Like, I don't know what the impact of that would be, right? So I don't feel equipped. So what I want is for the subject matter experts to make that call. But unless we have a formal process for doing that, we don't have a, then how do we do that? Like, it's just sort of up to whoever feels like showing up on the org repo issue. And then at some point, staff decide we have enough input to make a decision. That doesn't feel quite great to me. So, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, well, whose input how do we value every comment in the thread? And it just, I want it to be crisp, and clear. And I also want it to be transparent. Like, I don't think it's good for staff for it to just be like, oh, well, okay, everybody's given your input. Now staff will go into like a corner and huddle and like secretly decide what we actually want to do. So, I mean, maybe in some cases it's warranted to have that be the process. But for the most part, when it comes to judging stuff specifically, it should just be out in the open, and the trade-offs should be debated just like we do on the findings, right? So that's one thing that's coming up. I hope that, like, crossed fingers, that will happen within probably the next month or two. And I'm hoping that will really help, first of all, to engage the community in decision making and make sure everybody's voice is heard, but also just tie up a lot of loose ends that have been kind of lingering in there in terms of some of the edge cases and rules and stuff like that. So that's one thing. One thing we quietly shipped earlier this week is judges in Code4rena now have their own profiles. So wardens have profiles, judges now have profiles. It's a very subtle little thing, but if you navigate to a judge's profile, you'll now see the number of findings that they've judged is pretty impressive. And I think those numbers are actually going to go up, because I don't think we've actually been able to include all of the findings yet. So there's some data migration happening. But anyway, so that's kind of fun. And I think I can say safely that if you can take that as a hint of things to come, we definitely want to boost the visibility of everybody's successes and performance in the arena, and not just, numbers of highs and dollars on the leaderboard and all of that stuff. We're looking at different ways we can get different kinds of stuff onto people's profiles, maybe some other different kinds of profiles. Here's one thing I will say. There's some improvements to the leaderboard planned that I'm very keen on. I think everybody's quite keen on seeing. I think you can anticipate a lot more stats-based stuff in general. We have an amazing person on staff now who is experienced at all that kind of stuff. So data-driven storytelling and specifically esports style stats. So I'm excited to see what comes of that. We've been having some good conversations about some of the things that we'd like to be able to illustrate about different kinds of performance. Like, one of the things I'm very intrigued by, and I've wanted to do for a while, is, we've had, for a while now, we've had these special opportunities that are available to certified wardens. And so if you're a certified warden, there's different RSVPs that get posted, right? So like mitigation reviews are typically just posted for RSVP. To certified wardens, you have to have competed in the preceding audit, and it's based on the ranking in that audit. There's also, people are running solo audits through C4 now, so that's happening. There's the bot races. There have been some invitational audits, where there's a smaller group of wardens competing within, on the audit. We have test coverage competitions, which I don't know if that's on your radar, but it's we get a swarm of wardens who come in and compete to write tests for a protocol. So there's all these different kinds of competitions happening through C4, and they're not all reflected on the leaderboard, right? And part of why they're not just we haven't like shoehorned them into the leaderboard because they don't map to how the leaderboard currently works. And also some of them, because they're certified only opportunities, they have an amplification effect, right, on your leaderboard standing. Because it's like, well, if you already performed well, then you're more likely to get the RSVP, and then so then your winnings are gonna, you know what I mean? And so we wanted to think very carefully about that and like how we displayed it. So now on the leaderboard you can like toggle those things on and off so that you can see the sort of like the raw leaderboard that just doesn't have any of that stuff included, or the full leaderboard to get a bit better picture of people's earnings. However, there's more to come there. Like we haven't built everything in yet. So mitigation reviews are still not reflected. Bot races are still not reflected. There's more to be built in there. And I think it's a real opportunity to, like I said, just to celebrate everybody's different kinds of wins. So, and once it's on the leaderboard, like when I say leaderboard, I don't just mean like that one page on the website. I mean like that, those stats then can get, you know, used in a lot of different ways. And we're looking at ways to, you know, we want to make sure that the folks who are doing solo audits, that they have a way to like get those reports up on their profiles and stuff like that. So there's just a lot of different iterations coming towards those type of things. So that's one side of things, is just like kind of, I think of those as like the shiny parts of the, you know, the work. But there's deeper stuff too, which is like we're thinking really hard about, you know, we started out just straight out doing audits, right? But an audit is, I mean, every warden knows, is like, it's an analysis based on a snapshot in time, right? So it has a lot of value, but it doesn't necessarily extend into the future perfectly, right? It's like it gives you information about a snapshot in time. So so when we added test coverage, that was part of like, we were like, oh, let's expand. Like we want to create opportunities for the life cycle of a product, right? Like products evolve a lot over time, and like what happens in the early stages, test writing is like not most developers' favorite thing to do. And it's also like if you're trying to hit a ship deadline, it's like, you know, you're busy with other stuff. So test coverage is something where like we did our first one a while ago, but we're still trying to get the word out about it because it's I think it's a hugely valuable offering that we have, and the wardens who are into it are really, really skilled. It's huge value to the sponsors. They love being able to get all their tests written in like a week, you know, for a few days. So like depending on how big it is, it's and like what a wonderful thing to kind of come in and be like, at the end of the week you've got all your tests written, like joy. So that's a piece. We introduced the analysis submission type a while ago, and that is another piece of the puzzle where we're trying to help to provide the projects with a more like high level insight into you know, what are kind of the what do the wardens see as the areas of concern or the risk vectors, or, you know, at a high level, like how would you talk about the centralization risks? Like what are the things that the protocol should be really like considering over time, right? So, and that has like a dual purpose for us as well, because it's like we also, again, we're always looking for like how can we figure out more about the people in our community and what their specialties are, so that then we can create opportunities for those people. So that's helping us to see, oh, these are like the people who have, you know, because there's like, I think that in every group of people, there's like people who are really good at seeing the forest, and there's people who are really good at seeing like the ants at the base of the tree. And then there's everything in between, right? But and you need all of those people, especially in security. So we want to make sure that there's like opportunities for everybody, and that the sponsors are getting all of that value, that they're getting all of those levels of insight out of their work with us. So I can't say too much more in like a lot of depth, but I think you should expect to see more expansion in that realm. Like we want to be supporting projects through their life cycle of security, and not and be like, you know, providing them with uh, with ongoing security that supports them at every stage and not just on in this snapshot way. And it's the same is true. Like we're looking very closely at mitigation reviews, and how we can improve on that, because we know that's another one where it's like it's okay, right? Like what we're doing is valuable, but it could be better, right? And so, and we're trying to, and it's that's one of those places where it's like the competitive model is like it needs to be competitive. We strongly believe in competition as like a way of getting the best out of people, and ultimately a mitigation review, it needs to be collaborative. So how do we maybe tweak that part of our process to make it a little more collaborative with the sponsor team, so that we know, so that they're confident at the end of it, we're like, we have received the support we needed from the wardens to fully mitigate everything, and they walk away with like deployable code, right? And not just like another list of bugs.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely not something you want. And do you have any tips for wardens currently?
So the number one tip I always have for wardens is to read through past reports. And I think kind of everybody knows to do that. But the thing I would maybe point to specifically there is to look at the analyses in the more recent reports, and try to and have a look at what those folks are doing and what those wardens are contributing to the reports, because I think it's a very interesting complement to the bug reports and the findings themselves. So if you're a bug hunter and you just are like, no, I just want to find like super rare highs, like that's great, like fill your boots. But if you're interested in, looking at more kind of consultative, high level overview stuff, um, it's really worth looking at those analyses, because they're now at a point where they're providing a lot of value, and I think that's really worth looking at. All right, so I think that is an area that is not getting enough, or I don't see a lot of wardens talking about it. At least that's as much as I can say. Like I don't see people talking about it as much, but I think it's so right now it's not. It's not like you don't see it's not an area, it's not a type of submission where you can get a duplicate, right? It's graded, they're graded the way that QA and gas are. And it's I would really encourage people to look at like the A level, like the A grade analyses, and see what's going on there, and try their hand at it, because it can be lucrative, but also there's a lot of deep knowledge in there. So if you're trying to just level up your skills, I think you'll get a lot out of just reading those. So I would say not just reading the reports, but actually like clicking through into the repo and look for like all the A grade analyses for these different projects, and try to get a sense of like, oh, like what, how did these folks perceive um, the project overall. And it'll, I think it might also just guide you to seeing areas you may have overlooked when you were thinking about the protocol, right? I mean, that to me is like the magical mystery of wardens, is like your ability to read the code and then deduce like what's actually happening in the project is like magical to me. I would definitely be the person who like starts with the docs and like needs to like sift my way down to the code. So, but yeah, so I would look at those. I think that's really fun and interesting. And I would really encourage wardens to just ask each other questions in the Discord. I feel like that's an underrated source of wealth and education. We have some amazing community members who are really generous in sharing stuff. We have an education channel in the Discord. And also, I guess the other thing I would say is look for opportunities to just contribute to the community. I see a lot of wardens posting their own stuff in the education channel, which I love to see. Like, I love seeing what people are tweeting about and writing about and YouTubing and whatever. It's like it's that I've always I don't know who said it first, but the best way to learn is by teaching something. And I think I would really encourage everybody to get out there and start trying to teach what they've been learning. Like even if it's like you feel like you're maybe one or two steps ahead of the next person on anything, like there's value in showing them where those two steps are and helping them along. And then the last thing I would say is the other thing that I think is hugely underutilized in Code4rena is teams. And I would really encourage people to look at opportunities to team up. And the reason for that is when you work as a team, like, yes, you split the awards with somebody, but you you split it in half and you don't get docked that zero point 0.6, like that decrementer that gets attached to dupes, so it's the awarding mechanism is built to really try to reward people for teaming up. And I think, I mean, you know yourself, so not everybody is like really collaborative in how they work. But if you think that you might be able to learn from working with somebody, or that you might just get, more coverage or more efficiency by working that way, I really encourage people to do it, because I think we've seen some amazing performance by teams, but I feel like they're really underrepresented in general, or just that it's a mechanism that people don't necessarily think to use very often. And yeah, it's just it can be really, really valuable.
Yeah, I think with teams, there's a bit of issue with trust and collaboration in the space
Yeah,
where, you can't just jump in and start working with someone. You have to develop some sort of rapport, and that takes time. And it's just it can be tricky from the
for
practical side
sure.
of things. But on the other hand, if you manage to make it happen, there's more profit on the other
So I
way.
mean, I think that maybe the previous thing I said ties in, which is like if you're really engaging in the Discord and you're sharing educational, and you see who else is sharing stuff, I think that's a good sort of sign of trustworthiness, right? Is like if you see people who are sharing what they know and they're not like shielding it, like they want to protect their own advantage at all costs. That's always a good sign. And a multi-sig wallet. But yeah, for sure, it is tricky.
A
Yeah,
multi-sig always helps.
it does. Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you here,
Likewise, thank you for having me.
and I'm keen to see all the new stuff that C4
Thank
has in
you.
store.
Next time I'll try to bring more alpha with me.
No, this has been great. Thank you. This has been
Thanks.
great. I feel like you literally covered all the questions that I had, and I didn't have to do
Awesome.
anything. So it's been a pretty
Nice.
easy ride for me.
That's what I like to hear.